you to your cellular devices or your laptops and log onto Mentimeter. And the will be on our next screen. That will be an opportunity for you to engage in a live fashion as we go through today's session. So we'll have a number of questions and prompts, and you can share with us. And if Melissa can put up the instructions, you can go to your web browser and type in the code, and it will take you to our platform. So you can join at Mentimeter or menti.com and use the code at the top, or you can scan this code using your camera and zooming in on this QR code. If you need assistance, a member of my team can help and assist as necessary. As you're doing that, I also want to thank Friendship Public Charter School for having us this evening. We are in this beautiful facility, and it is one of our great school campuses here in Ward 5, and they have been a great partner to us. I also want to thank the council's budget team, who is a great partner to our office as well. And we are joined by Ann Phelps. We will be joined by Ann Phelps, the budget counsel or legal counsel, as well as Errol Spence. And you'll get to know them shortly as they will lead a portion of tonight's presentation that inform you about the logistical procedures around the budget. And then last but not least, I want to thank my staff. You may have interacted with members of my team. I want to thank Connor Shaw, my Deputy Chief of Staff. Connor is heading up my team's budget process. We're all rolling up our sleeves and working, but I'm highlighting Connor because if there are items that you want to highlight or questions you have, I would encourage you to reach out to Connor as a follow-up to tonight's meeting. We also have Rochelle Roberts, my Chief of Staff. I'm missing Melissa Littlepage, our Communications Director. Oliver Stout is our Constituent Services Director. I think Sam Bonner is somewhere around here or maybe downstairs. He is now our Policy Advisor. He's wearing multiple hats, starting as a Constituent Services Coordinator for ANC 5E and F. And he is transitioning to our policy team. And Nefertiti Brown is outside. She is our legislative director. There are others that make the magic happen, and we hope that you'll get to know members of the team, but I could not do this work without them. So again, tonight is an opportunity for us to hear from you. It is less us presenting what we're thinking about the budget, but more so hearing what are your priorities, what are some of the hot button topics that the council will engage on. For instance, RFK, should we have a stadium? Should we not have a stadium? What are the parameters of development RFK? Those are going to be some of the questions we dig into tonight. Next slide. Well, before we move on, if you can go back, just a check. Anybody need assistance with getting onto Mentimeter? Okay. Again, you can log on at the top at menti.com and by going to your web browser. And you can use the code. It is 749-31189. If you cannot see that or engage that way, you can take out your camera, scan this QR code, and it should take. Does anyone need assistance from a member of my team? Rochelle, can you? Miss Dorothy is over here. Anybody else need assistance? Okay. I also want to thank our signing services. It is important for us that we provide access to a wide range of residents. And so I too want to thank our partners who are allowing us to provide access. We are also being joined by neighbors online. And so we are engaging you here in the room as well as residents online. And we're going to move forward, starting with some icebreakers. So you're going to use Mentimeter to respond to these questions and prompts. The first of which is simple. Where do you live in Ward 5? And so as you respond, you should start seeing the responses populate on the screen.
It's going to help me read them now.
Where do you live in Ward 5? Brooklyn, Edgewood, Riggs Park, Eckington, Fort Lincoln. So if possible, try to respond on the screen. What this will also do is create a written record for our team so that we can go back and review all of your responses. I want to emphasize that we take your feedback very seriously, and it informs what we advocate for in the budget process. I love this. We have community members from all across the board. Keep it coming. And I made clear to the mayor in our meeting that I expect Ward 5 to be a winner in the budget. And we're going to talk about some of the wins we've secured thus far. I also expect Ward 5 to be a winner as it relates to RFK. RFK is not in Ward 5, but I do expect and plan to engage heavily around the development to ensure Ward 5 neighbors are benefiting. And so from 31 responses, you can see the diverse representation across our ward. This is amazing. I would say keep it coming. For those of you that are just joining us, we are using Mentimeter. At the top, you can see menti.com, and you can use the code to engage with us interactively. I would ask those of you who are at the table with someone that may have just walked in, if you can help them get up to speed, that would be great. There will be times throughout today's presentation where we ask people to share out loud. Next question. How long have you lived in the district? Someone said the numbers aren't big enough. All right, by show of hands, how many of us grew up in DC? All right, we have natives. And all right, here's a test. How many of us grew up in Ward 5? Okay. It's good representation across the room. Keep responses coming. And there's a broad mix. All right, we have another question for you. What are you hoping to get out of today's budget meeting? And I'll just read it for those who may not be able to see the screen. Understand the budget process, advocate for specific investments, learn about my neighbors is concerned, help shape my council members' priorities. For those of you who are just joining us, we ask that you join us on Mentimeter. You can log in via menti.com using the code at the top of this. One of the priorities for my team is to lead with curiosity. And so I love that the first response is learning about what other neighbors care about. I think that's important. The more we share and learn from each other, I think it deepens our own understanding of the budget process, our city, our values, and I think that's really important. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to keep us moving. When we say your feedback shapes our priorities, we mean it. And so this slide is just to share some of the data we've received in previous years and how that's translated into concrete investments via the budget. And so my first year in office in 2023, our top survey responses were about traffic safety, investments in parks and green space, and school safety. Via the fiscal year 24 budget, which was the budget process we underwent in 2023, I was able to secure investments for South Dakota Avenue. We secured pocket parks for 19th and Hill in our Carver-Livingston community, and Riggs in South Dakota, Riggs Park. Really excited about those parks. I'm also happy to say that we are working with DPR to actually get them to deliver those parks in a more timely fashion. And we offered an amendment in the budget process that commissioned the Deputy Mayor for Education to both commission a task force, come up with recommendations to improve safety in our schools. And we have been working with the Deputy Mayor to act on those recommendations. One second. In 2024, our top survey responses were about supporting families, ensuring Fort Lincoln in particular, had a fully funded rec center, and public safety. As you may remember, that budget process was at the height of what some would describe as a crime wave in the district. And as a result, I'm very proud to say, secured a historic and first of its kind child tax credit that we hope to scale over time. Right now, children under the age of 6 for low income and middle income families will receive $450 tax credit starting this fiscal year. We also were able to secure additional funds for the Fort Lincoln Rec Center. That rec center will break ground this spring. I am told that it will break ground in April. And you may
I need to be a front. That part.
For those of you who live in Fort Lincoln, this has been a long time coming.
Yes, it has.
And I know there are many needs for many communities, but this is just one example of how we heard resoundingly from neighbors that we want this rec center. And so we secured in that instance $8 million+ to make sure that we brought that rec center online. And we expanded safe passage routes in Brookland and Fort Titan to improve safety, as that was a key priority for neighbors. So this is an example to say we listen to you. Your feedback actually does inform what I am advocating for and going to bat for in the budget process. And I expect this year to be no different. All right, fiscal year 26. There are challenges that are confronting the district. And there are any number of them. And I just want to highlight some of them and give you an opportunity to weigh in. It is anticipated this week we will receive revenue estimates from the CFO. And it is anticipated that the fiscal year 26 budget will see lower revenue growth, increased costs, and federal spending cuts. I will put a little asterisk by that federal spending cut because we do not actually have full knowledge around what those cuts might entail for the district. I'll give you one example. Medicaid cuts could potentially be devastating for the district, as they will be for any number of jurisdictions. Not to go too the weeds, but right now we have about a $130 million gap. If we were to simply remain flat and provide the level of care and service via Medicaid in fiscal year 26 than we are right now. Put differently, we need to find $130 million just to provide a same level of service. On top of that, as you all may know, congressional Republicans are proposing cuts to Medicaid, frankly. And in DC, that could spell cuts up to about $1 billion, anywhere from $800 million to $1 billion, which would be difficult for us, if not impossible for us to cover. So I don't want this to be too doom and gloom, but I use that as an example of how we don't yet know what all of the spending cuts might entail from the federal government. But with that said, what should we prioritize in a tough budget year, knowing that revenue will likely decline? Even if it were to remain flat, that is a decline with rising costs. What should we prioritize? Some of what you're responding and saying: home rule, more housing, I-83, public safety, traffic safety. The larger the letters mean more neighbors are saying that thing. And so the larger letters I am seeing is traffic safety, public safety, housing, childcare, early childcare, invest outside. Moving too fast.
Outside downtown.
Outside downtown, yes. So it goes without saying, every investment in the budget is a trade-off. Any of these investments, there could be a sound and good argument for, and we just should expect that with any investment, there is a trade-off. We are not investing in something else. But this is helpful to let us know where we as a team ought to prioritize. I'll give you a few more seconds. I will say a personal priority for me is expanding the child tax credit. As I mentioned last year, we were able to secure this historic first of its kind investment in the district. And while we were able to cover children under the age of 6, it is my goal over several years to get that as close to covering children under the age of 17 and to increase the investment up to or beyond $3,000. So right now we are covering children under the age of 6 at about $450. So if you are a parent with 2 children under the age of 6, God bless you. That would be about a $900 tax credit as an example. But why is this so important? At the height of the pandemic, a federal child tax credit was implemented and it slashed child poverty rates in half in the country. In fact, I argue that it has been the most single effective anti-poverty measure implemented in this country in the last 50 to 70 years. On top of that, it raised the economic floor for families across this country. It also begs the question, well, if it was so successful, why would the federal government do that? That is a worthy question to ask. But we know that poverty continues to be an issue in the district. We are seeing poverty grow. In fact, in this year's ACFR hearing, it was highlighted that for the first time in a while, poverty in the district actually increased. We also know that while our revenues and prosperity as a city increase, it is tougher for some families to live and stay and thrive in the district. And it is my belief that we ought to do more to support families and support children so that they can thrive. Last plug I would argue for why this is a priority for me is that the research is clear that as we support families and raise the economic floor, we boost children's academic gains, health gains, life outcomes, and the list goes on. And so as we are prioritizing any of those things, I think the child tax credit serves as a powerful tool for us to move in that direction. So that is, I will say, a priority for me and my team personally. And we wanted to get a sense from you. Do you agree? And thank you for your feedback. RFK, you have probably heard a lot of talk about RFK. What I will say at the outset is no deals are final. We do not yet have a plan or a proposal. I know there's been a lot of talk of a stadium. And what I have said, and I will remain clear on, is that there are certain parameters where I could support a stadium, and there are certain parameters where I could not. This question is more about what are some of the potential deals that you would support as it relates to RFK. For those that may not be up to speed on this, RFK was transferred over to the district, about 100-year lease. We have the rights to develop on this land, which is about 70, I forget the acreage, but it's a lot of acres. And right now we have the dilapidated RFK stadium. We have an opportunity to create a mixed-use site where there could be housing, recreational outlets, transportation hubs, a stadium, and many more things. And we want to get a sense of what do you think is important? Some of the responses I'm seeing: a grocery store, new affordable and market rate housing, and I think that is leading out of the pack. What is interesting, it seems like a stadium is, while on the board, is receiving fewer nods than some of these other things. Just very quickly, what I will say on the stadium that's been important for me. I believe district residents should not be on the hook to pay for a stadium that a billionaire and their partners own. And so while I'm not opposed to a stadium, a deal breaker for me would be any proposal that asks district residents to foot the bill to develop the construction of a stadium. Also a deal breaker for me is any proposal that would monopolize RFK site with parking, asphalt parking lots. I think that would be an underutilization of that prime real estate that could be used for housing, recreational outlets, etc. And there is a very niche topic that a lot of people are not talking about. when Mayor Bowser in the midnight hours, if you remember the back and forth trying to get this done, she made a promise to Senator Mike Lee that there would be an investment in the district's NPS land, National Park Service land, as it relates to this development. What I have said, and I'm going to keep saying, is that we have to make true on that. And here's where Ward 5 can win out. Ward 5 should be prioritized as it relates to that NPS land. We have NPS land all across Ward 5 from Riggs Park, Port Todden, the gateways into our city that is often underkept, underutilized. And just think about the millions of dollars that could be used, for instance, to mine the leftover bombs that are still sitting in Port Todden that is currently roped off because the federal government hasn't paid for it. So my pitch, for instance, how Ward 5 wins in this development is let us have first dibs on the NPS investments that will be guaranteed through this project. More to come, but this is helpful data for us to know where your priorities are. And I share your concern about new affordable housing, keyword affordable. All right, I want to keep moving. Downtown. What changes will make you more likely to spend downtown? And while you're responding, why do we keep talking about downtown? Because the reality is
That's with money, that's the most tax revenue we get from.
downtown serves as an economic engine for the city. There's no other way to put it. And so while my priority is investing and advocating for Ward 5, we have to be real that we also have to shore up downtown. A question for me is, what would actually attract more people downtown? I'm not convinced that just by building expensive housing that many people can't afford, that more people are going to just spend time downtown. And so this question is seeking more input around where we can actually invest that might draw more traffic to our downtown. Some responses I'm seeing, nothing. Safety, more affordable parking, free parking, delicious affordable restaurants and stores, parking. Nothing, more residents. I would like to open a family-friendly business concept. So if I could summarize, some of what I'm seeing is making sure that it's safe to go downtown and making sure that it's accessible and easy for one to go downtown, park, or just engage. So this is really helpful. Thank you. I am going to now turn it over to our council budget team. Oh no, we have another question. What programs or services should the district focus on and invest in through these agencies to improve outcomes for district youth? So as you all may know, I am the chair of the newly minted Council Committee on Youth Affairs. It has oversight and part of the Office of the Attorney General, which oversees juvenile delinquency in the district. Also DRS, CFSA, and when I say DRS, the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services, CFSA, Child Family Services Agency, as well as some smaller agencies. The question here is around how can we better support our young people? Obviously, education is paramount for me, and we spend a lot of money. But through the agencies connected to the Committee on Youth Affairs, where can we put this? I promise it's going to be more interactive, but I'm trying to get to the meat of today's presentation. So while I'm tempted to do like call outs, I do want to get the budget team up, and then we'll do more engagement as we talk about investments for fiscal year 26, which is where I want to spend most of the time. Financial literacy, jail parent accountability, partial penalties, yoga, employment and jail job skill training. While our council budget team members come up, I will say I was at DRS today. I visited the YSC facility with members of my team. We have the oversight hearing coming up for DRS on March 6th. And it was important for me to engage directly with the youth and hear from them about their experience in DRS, but also what might help them not return in the future. And there were three things that stood out to me, and then I'm going to turn it over. One, they all highlighted education, which to me was surprising. that young people were aware that education is so important, but they were also aware that they were being underserved in DRS at YSC through the services that they are receiving. It is worth noting that young people at New Beginnings, which is also part of DRS, receive a slightly different educational experience. And so that is something we're looking at. They also talked about when they leave DRS or they're in the community, there's a lack of support, both in terms of housing, job placement, mentorship. As one young person put it, when you don't have people helping you, you find your way in the streets. And I thought that was like really powerful to have a 16-year-old talk about their experience in that. And then the last thing one highlighted was about job access. Our young people want and need jobs, and they want and need money. And so those are some of the things as a committee we will be focused on to expand opportunities for our young people, but also to ensure that we can decrease the amount of young people at DRS, but also that are entering our criminal justice system. So thank you for your engagement here. I am going to now turn it over to Ann Phelps and Errol Spence from the council's budget office. They're going to talk about the formal council process. We know that some of you all are experts on the budget process. Some of you, this may be your first time engaging. And so our apologies in advance if some of this feels repetitive. This is going to then lead us to the fiscal year 26 budget questions around where we should invest and spend our hard-earned tax dollars. So with that, Ann, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. So I apologize to the people at home because I don't know how to use a little microphone. So from the survey before, I could tell that the budget process is the least interesting part of tonight's presentation. So I will try not to spend too much time going over the process for you so you have time to get into the meat of things. So we talk a lot about the budget. What is it? Well, I think you know by and large that the budget is how we are spending our money and how we get that money, where the funds are from, how we split it up. It's not unlike your own budget at home. The difference is once the council appropriates the dollars in those buckets or envelopes or however you do it, we can't move them. So once we get through the budget process, the budget is set. We don't get to change it. If we spend too much in one area, the council can't say spend it differently. Only the mayor can do that through her process. So the budget comes in 4 pieces of legislation. The Local Budget Act is the one with all the dollar signs and the numbers assigned to each agency and components. The Budget Support Act is a big compilation of mini laws that are used to implement all the changes to the numbers and the agencies. We have a Federal Portion Budget Request Act, which is essentially a formality of asking Congress for dollars associated with programs that they have created for us. So DC TAG is one, the school vouchers is another, things like the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, which does a lot of research for us, things like that. It's sort of a formal request for things that the Congress appropriates in its budget. And the last piece is what we call the supplemental, and it is a separate piece of legislation with changes to the current year budget. So when the mayor sends down her fiscal year 26 budget, the fiscal year is October 1 to September 30th, she will also send a supplemental, which will be changes to the current year, which is fiscal year 25. So what do you think? And I'm going to hand the money talk over to Errol. Errol is our Associate Director of Operating, and he is the numbers guy. I'm the lawyer, so I'm the words person, but I'm going to give this to you. Oh, look at you, fancy.
All right, so how much in billions do you guys think we spend annually on operating this
This year or in general?
year? Annually, so every year this year.
Okay.
Highest one right now looks to be maybe 30, 20.
All the way at 50.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, the higher that means the more people you get.
Has everybody had a chance?
You guess around, let's say 20 to 30, I think that would be a great guess. Operating is essentially what we use to run the district. So if you think about teachers who work in this building or grants that we send out, you know, to hospitals to cover health costs or Medicaid, all those things would fall into the operating budget, pretty much which keeps us running day to day. The capital budget, a smaller pool of money, but those are longer term investments. So this actual building, like building of a school, that would be considered a capital expenditure. Pretty much things that we like to describe it, if you were to take a building and turn it upside down, all the things that did not fall out were capital expenditure items. So big investments that stay for a long time.
Can you speak up, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. If you were in charge of our operating budget, how would you allocate $100? So categories that you have to choose from are health, housing support and human services, public education like schools, public safety, police, firefighters, economic development, housing, financing, so that's to pay our debt. We borrow money for some of our longer term investments.
And when you borrow money, you have to pay the interest rate. That's essentially what debt service is for. That's what.
Operations, so trash removal, roads, transit, and then the mayor, the council, and your independent agencies, your admin overhead, I guess. Public ed is high, which aligns with how we kind of currently spend it. Public ed is currently high. Okay, you guys are getting closer to the actual picture. I think this is
You
about.
are not new.
Yeah, this is about right. Except I'll let you guys keep going, but
Other awards way off.
this is the first ward that I've been to, first ward presentation.
It'll be the best one.
And I think I almost always come to the Ward 5. One. I have a soft spot for Ward 5. It's across the street from where I live.
I think we're about done. So the correct answer, at least at the top, would just be a little bit flipped. Health is going to be our highest area of expenditures. Just because, as Councilmember Walker mentioned earlier, we do receive a significant amount of money from the federal government to pay for Medicaid.
I think that's the next slide. So you guys were very close.
Kind of hard to see these boxes here in the back, but human support services is number one. So pretty much where our operating budget goes. That includes healthcare. That number is 7 billion. Medicaid alone is close to 4 billion. So very, very expensive. Public education system is second. Financing and other, which is essentially paying down our debt. That's third. Public safety and justice, so police, firefighters, that would be fourth, and then you have infrastructure, government support and direction would be your overhead, so kind of like the council, the mayor, and independent agencies, and then economic development is kind of further down. If you were in charge of our capital budget, how would you allocate this $100? Shelters for unhoused neighbors, emergency vehicles like police stations. So I know we mentioned police officers earlier in operating, but that would be their operating costs, like paying actual salaries for police officers, paying salaries for correctional officers. This is the capital side of that. So cars that you drive, the facilities that you have to house individuals in, schools, parks, and public libraries, roads, bridges, and tunnels, and then investment in neighborhood developments.
Quick check for understanding. How do we define the capital budget? Somebody, anybody?
What you really need to take it is to define a capital budget. You need to take it also bring in what is it called a budget that is quote unquote you can develop And also, you can get like little rock grants to help keep that thing in order and get it moved on.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you. Yes.
I'm understanding, you're asking, what is the capital?
Yeah, like how might you define it to someone that say you went to this presentation? What is the capital budget?
My understanding, I believe the capital budget is a large pot of money that's to be dispersed among competing needs, competing priorities, using whatever formulas that is.
Let me rephrase the question. How is it?
So I think Errol described it, but I think what was hard for people, especially in the back, to hear.
You did a great job.
Okay,
I heard it
tell me,
very well.
tell me.
What was explained is that the operating budget is what we're using in short term in order to operate the District of Columbia in what we say will be a fiscal year. While the other budget that was just referenced is long term and what we're doing longer projects. For example, the 11th Street Bridge would be seen as something that would come from that budget. And those things are more closely tied to your federal funds because it takes longer to do them. So that's just a way to look at it and make it kind of easier. You were very clear, bro.
And
That was good.
and you gave an example of turning the house upside.
Yep.
Can you give that example again?
Yeah, so the example with the capital budget, essentially, if we were to take this building to school, turn it upside down
And shake it.
and shake it, everything that stayed would be capital. So like the HVAC units, like those could be considered capital. The desks would fall out because those are short-term, well, somewhat shorter-term expenditures. So that's kind of how we like to think.
And the paper and the people. Those are all operating. They're all gonna fall.
But the thing is, if you had a block grants can help on certain things too. Those are your easiest things to try to take to get. Such things like, roads, such things as housing, that is the key thing that we should be really looking at. And also making sure that we don't have have people asking us for money at the bus stop and every freaking thing. That's totally what should be really be done.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Okay, so yeah, I think maybe you guys are a little bit closer on the operating side than capital, but that's all right. Most of our money goes towards roads, bridges, tunnels, schools. Well, roads, bridges, and tunnels, I would say that's more the operating and infrastructure side.
Sidewalks.
Public education is second, similar to the operating side. Economic development, fourth. Then I think, public safety and justice is next. That I think we consider like DRS facilities, police stations and fire stations,
Fire trucks.
fire trucks too. Enterprise and other funds, and then human support services. In human support services, we consider like capital. Those are a lot of IT projects. So, you know, Medicaid and those types of expenditures, they require a lot of like systems to manage like data. And so those are also considered capital.
Explain enterprise fund.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, he asked if we could explain enterprise funds.
Yeah, so enterprise funds are like separate entities. So I would say our health benefit exchange, they're not like directly related to our administration of healthcare, but we do give them funding. United Medical Center, they receive subsidy. So entities that we don't directly manage as a government, but we do give them funding, those we would consider enterprise.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question.
Anne's gonna take over.
There's another question.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
So a quick question, how are entities, how do you decide which entities give them?
Those are designed by legislation, so, and some of them actually are in the Home Rule Act, so DC Water is an example. But we don't typically, at least in my 16 years at council, I can't think of a time where we've created a new enterprise agency except the Health Benefit Exchange.
That's right, yeah, from the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, but that was through federal legislation. So I'm not, those are fairly well established and they're not direct, they're not necessarily things you would directly interact with in the way that you would the DMV or the DC Public Library or DPR or DCPS. Like those, they're very different functional agencies. So
And they don't change often.
no, and there's very little we do with their funds because most of it's prescribed by law in some way.
One more
Yes,
question.
sir.
You may have addressed this at the beginning. What was the total amount for the fiscal year 25 budget versus the proposed fiscal year 26?
I think I could be wrong, I think 25 was 19 and then 19 billion, excuse me, and 26, well, 26 we haven't gotten yet, sorry, 25 proposed or approved was 21 billion. And 26 we haven't gotten yet.
And I would say it's like 21.2 and I think 18.6 or something is what we really use, and the other part is the enterprise. So
But you said it was a tight year. That's what I'm trying, what do you base it on?
I think because for 26, we're expecting a lot of like federal pressures, given that there's a significant amount of our, well, not a significant amount, there's a good chunk of our budget that comes from federal government about.
like other
Five.
states, not because we're
Yes,
special.
it's not just us, about 5 billion. So that would kind of constrain us because we, typically only are allocating local funding. The federal funding we get, but they're for prescribed purposes. So like as council, Councilmember Parker and colleagues are making decisions, they're operating with a local pot of money. But if we're losing federal money, some of that we may have to backfill with local dollars. So it constrains our ability to like operate.
And if I can add one more thing to that, the other thing is, as you are all experiencing in your own lives, the rising costs for different things, those same cost increases impact the government. And so it's actually, I think Councilmember Parker alluded to this in his remarks, is that the cost of doing government, just the services that we already provide, the cost of that is going up. And he cited a figure, I think it was 130 million, where we have a gap between just providing what we call the current services funding with what costs are. And also related to that, I'm sorry, because I know you have questions. If you think about like capital costs, right? We have a capital budget designed to build schools and renovate libraries and do roads and all of these things. Well, building costs are increasing, and certainly if these tariffs take effect and go forward, the cost, our building materials come a lot from Canada and Mexico, and those are going to increase costs. So the amount that we have budgeted currently in the capital improvement plan from 25 to whatever 6 years is. I'm in the budget office, so I'm not doing simple math, but that, those costs are not going to be the same in the FY26 budget as they were expected in 25 because of the costs of construction materials.
So to put a pin on that, we will learn this week what the CFO says the district's revenue estimates are, and that is what the mayor will use to build her budget. So it could come as early as tomorrow, but it should be sometime this week, and we'll know where the numbers are. What the mayor made clear, and is what Ann is alluding to, is the CFO is likely to say revenue is flat. And you may hear that as great, we could do what we did last year, but with rising costs, a flat revenue number is actually a cut in many respects.
Yes.
We are limited on time, but these are great questions. I'm gonna take two. I think there was one here and one here.
I knew it for the time.
Okay, well, let's take one here and then we'll keep going.
Sidebar.
Okay, sidebar. Okay, keep going.
All right. So one of the things that the council does, besides being the appropriator and managing the budget, is we're a legislature, and so we pass laws. And every piece of legislation has to come with a fiscal impact statement. So the OCFO evaluates the legislation, looks at the agency's budget, and looks at whether or not new responsibilities can be absorbed within their existing budget, or if they'll need additional monies to actually do that task. And so if we pass a law and it's going to cost money, the law doesn't become applicable until it's funded. So that bill, while it becomes law, it goes through the whole process. It's not applicable or effective, like it isn't implemented until we fund it. And so I think you have an example up here of one of your bills. And so Councilmember Parker shepherded this bill through the council. They voted on it, they supported it, they passed it. It went to the mayor. Did she sign it?
She did.
She signed it. Sometimes she just returns them unsigned and it still becomes law. And then from there it goes to Congress. The Home Rule Act requires that we send all our bills to Congress for a passive review period, typically 30 days, longer if the bill touches certain titles of criminal law or other places. And then once it gets through that congressional period, it becomes law. But it doesn't get implemented until the council or the mayor in her budget allocates funding for it. So, and one of my jobs is to track all the bills that are subject to funding. And so I have a spreadsheet up on our website, which I am redesigning to make more user-friendly. So let's just quickly give you the rundown on the process. As the council member just said, the chief financial officer will issue the February revenue estimates. It'll likely be Thursday or Friday. And that's where the CFO says, okay, we're anticipating that based on all these factors, you're going to have this much revenue coming in the next fiscal year and over the financial plan. And so we are required under the Home Rule Act, the mayor has to propose a budget within those resources, right? So it's all the resources available to the district. And one of those resources is going to be all this predicted revenue. And so she'll get that this week. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I have not heard senior mentioned yet, so the seniors in the District of Columbia fit into the budget at all?
Yes, in lots of
I had
places.
that one.
In lots of
But
places.
nothing
Yes.
mentioned about seniors.
Well, I
We
can-
are seniors.
Yes.
So
and
right
you
now,
are-
so right now we're going through the process, and then the very
Yes.
next thing will be focused on constituencies like seniors and other topics.
And what your needs are and what,
Yes.
and what you hope the council's priorities.
Yes.
We're just explaining to you how you get it, how we get there. Because right now, it's not the council's to make any decisions with. Right now, the mayor is gonna get that number and finalize her proposal. On April 2nd, she's gonna send that proposal to the council. And then that starts the council's process. The budget gets separated out. So each committee will get the budget associated with that to decide whether or not those are the appropriate funding levels for what's in their committee. I don't know how many hearings you'll have, but a lot. Typically one per agency to hear from the public about what they think is right and wrong with that proposal, and to hear from the government justifying why they need whatever increase they're getting or why the cuts that the mayor made aren't gonna decimate the agency. So there's hearings, and then once the committees all mark up their proposal, they recommend a proposal to the chairman. And then the chairman spends a couple of weeks pulling all those committee budgets together into a single council-wide budget. And during that time, he's also meeting with all the council members for the pieces that they couldn't fund or priorities that are still out there that we need to figure out. And then he releases the council-wide budget. It'll be May 27th or something. He'll circulate. They'll vote on the 28th for first vote. And then 2 weeks later, have the second vote, because all the bills in council have to have two votes at least 2 weeks apart. And what else do you have on there? Yes. And then once we pass the budget, we send it to the mayor. The mayor, under the Home Rule Act, has 10 business days basically to review all legislation, and she can return it signed. She can return it unsigned, which is just saying she doesn't like something, but it's not so bad that she's gonna veto it. That's the third option. She could veto it. No mayor, I don't think, has vetoed a budget in the time I've been paying attention. So, and then after that, like every other piece of legislation, it goes to Congress for that passive review period. What we're facing right now, and this says here, Congress has an opportunity to overturn a budget. When our legislation goes to Congress, if both houses of Congress, if the House and the Senate both file a disapproval resolution, then it goes to the president, and the president can sign that, and then our laws are overturned. A more dangerous, and they might do that, who knows? I can't predict anything that's happening there. But the other thing that is pending, that's gonna have could have a very significant impact on us, and the council members talked about that too, is Congress is right now, we have a continuing resolution for the federal budget that's expiring next month. And they often use the congressional budget to limit how we can spend money, including our own money. And so one fear I think that we spend a lot of time twisted up about is what kind of trouble are they going to cause for us in their budget bills this year? And I'm sorry if anybody here works at Congress, but they should stay at. But they like to interfere, and they like to tell us how to spend our money. And with this administration and this Congress, we're not sure what that might look like. And that will, as the council member said, And as Errol talked about, will impact our budget. So that is the quick and dirty
Thank you.
budget process.
And Errol and Jen Budoff, who is not here, they're all amazing. Their entire team is amazing. And I just want to highlight opportunities to shape the budget. Tonight is just one opportunity. As I mentioned, we will engage the mayor. But when the mayor makes her formal presentation of her budget on April 2nd, there are still many opportunities to engage, including sharing at budget oversight hearings, also sharing with your representatives as we are approaching those two critical budget votes. Here's your plug. If you care about a Ward 5 priority, yes, share it with me, but also share it with your at-large council members and the chairman. They are your representatives as well. We're going to move to the next slide for the sake of time because we want to hear from you on your priorities. So this is just a quick check for understanding. How has this helped improve your understanding of the budget process? And again, thank you, Ann and Errol, for your helpful presentation. Some would argue that the budget is by far the most important responsibility of our government and of the council. I actually think it's performance oversight, but the budget is up there and it is critical. Thank you. We're going to go to the next question for the sake of time. What questions do you have about the budget process? While we may not be able to get to all of the questions, what I commit to doing is following up. We will share responses in our newsletter, and if necessary, we can follow up with you directly. I'm happy to answer questions, one or two here now before moving on, but you can also list them here. Yes.
So I got that. So you have, I know Congress is supposed to vote tonight on Medicaid and SNAP. So how much was allocated for us? How much money did we receive for Medicaid and SNAP in this fiscal year?
Oh,
Medicaid is about 4 billion.
can you say that louder?
Medicaid is about 4 billion. I'm not 100% sure the SNAP number.
Yeah, we can look at the SNAP number, but to just give you a sense of something we're paying attention to, the formula for the district's Medicaid is about 75% federal government, 25% district covering the cost. A proposal is that we split that 50-50, which would be devastating and we would not be able to afford it. That is a delta of, I think, around $800 or so million. And so that is what we're up against. And that means people lose their coverage and or we have to find that money somewhere else. Great question. And we can get you the SNAP numbers as well. Yes.
There was no discussion about earmarks. I know we talked about what various agencies receive. So for instance, we want to earmark for Langdon Elementary and Marquis. How should we add that into the process? How can we get that added into the budget?
Great question. We don't often call it earmarks, but there is a process for earmarks. I'm going to ask Ann to share that. What I would say for something like that, advocate with us. We will push and fight to make sure it's included in the budget. We have had school-specific investments before, whether it's about food prints or whether it's about like the Safe Passage program that we were able to secure dollars. So there is precedent for that. But earmarks, do you want to share about?
Yeah, if I can just quickly, sorry. We fund schools through the UPSFF, which is the Uniform Per Pupil Spending Formula, Uniform Per Student Funding Formula. And that's prescribed in law. And so it's difficult for us to fund individual schools separately because we have to use this formula to fund it. But the Councilmember is right that there have been avenues to do some different programs. But it is, I want to caution you that it can be very challenging just because of the formula. In terms of earmarks, we do have a process in the council rules. So if a member wants to ensure that a grant, for instance, there's, I'm trying to think of one that we've done recently. So I think there was funding for Black Swan Academy to provide services for classes for students. And so the chairman put in this, you do it as a grant, but in order to receive it, there's a whole process that the organization has to have, like incorporation documents, or if they don't have incorporation documents, there's a whole bunch of stuff they have to submit, including a proposal for how the funds will be spent and so on. So it's sort of administrative.
And for our schools, it's a little tricky, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Okay.
And I know Langdon is a community that is strongly advocating for its needs, and we fully support that. So for the sake of time, I would say keep your questions coming. We're gonna keep moving because we want to hear more from you. All right, getting your input on the budget. Before we turn to this question, if we can go back one, I'm gonna break up the flow so it's less presenting to you. I'm gonna ask you to turn and talk 30 seconds and just say, what is one thing you are hyper focused on in the fiscal year 26 budget that you want to ensure is invested in? So turn and talk to those at your table. I'm gonna ask a few of you to share out, and I'm gonna keep going. All right, let's come back together. All right, let's come back together. I'm gonna ask somebody back at Talu's table. I'm gonna ask somebody back at, all right, so here we go. If you hear my voice, clap once. If you hear my voice, clap twice. If you hear my voice, clap 3 times. All right, I'm gonna ask somebody at that back table where Talu is. Just someone share, what is an investment you discussed?
One was that making sure the flood cracks in the happen, that was very interesting. Then also we were just saying.
Absolutely, thank you for that. I want to come up here, over here, yes.
We talked about
Senior citizen,
mental health.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Langdon Elementary School, Langdon is here, and we're gonna ask,
CYRF.
yes, and then we're gonna talk about one more table, yep.
Traffic safety was one, and initiative 83 was another.
And litter. Okay, so keep them coming. The question again is, what district programs, agencies, or resources have had the greatest positive impact on you, your family, and your neighbors? Some of the responses: the bike share program, traffic safety, DC Health Families Workforce Development, DPR Communal Farms. Who answered that? Is that Sam? Oh, no. This year, DC's unemployment benefits will have the biggest impact on me and neighbors, as we are all terminated as a result of federal workforce reduction. And I just wanna, thank you for being vulnerable. It is a moment that we're all dealing with. The level of uncertainty is high. What I can say is that we do have a resource page on our website. Anything my team can do to help you as a neighbor or other neighbors navigate these uncertain times, we're happy to do that and to advocate on your behalf. I'm not sure if people are responding online, but thank you all for engaging as well. All right, let's go to what Ward 5 facilities could benefit most from more investment. And I want you to think expansively. Our parks, our rec centers, our schools, our buildings. What Ward 5 facilities could benefit
most from more investment. Again, I'm gonna turn and talk for 30 seconds. This time, we're gonna ask you to clap once, and that just is your signal to come back. So turn and talk about this question as well as share here on the screen.
Right, especially like, well, read on Twitter, yeah, you can read.
No.
All right, if you can hear my voice clap once, if you can hear my voice clap twice, if you can hear my voice clap 3 times. Thank you all for bearing with me. So some of the responses that we see, Harry Thomas read. I think I saw Langdon read, Edgewood read. Our Parks and Recreation. My team in last week's newsletter put out a schedule for the construction and the development of our rec centers. I strongly encourage you to check that out. Harry Thomas Rec is slated for redevelopment. Langdon Rec is slated for redevelopment. Fort Lincoln is slated for redevelopment, and it will break ground in April. We are holding DPR to that, and they are filling the heat, as I am filling the heat from Fort Lincoln neighbors. And as well as our school communities are continuing through their modernization processes. I see some of our friends that flagged our seniors are leaving. Before you leave, I did note here, someone wrote senior facility. Was that someone in this room? Or maybe it was somebody online. There's somebody in this room. What do you mean by senior facility?
I think that seniors should have a space where they can kind of really have to move. Oftentimes they're ostracized and not really loved. So
I agree. I will just name 3 things that are in the works. And I don't necessarily think this is sufficient, but just that are moving forward. We continue to advocate for Turkey Thicket. We know our seniors love Turkey Thicket from the pool to the grounds. And there are frankly a lot of maintenance requests there. And that is primarily because of the age of the facility. A lot of things are fixed and then the next week they're broken again. And so I received a commitment from the DPR director this week to do another walkthrough and revisit repairs at Turkey Thicket. I'm happy to share that. 2, we have a senior advisory committee. If you are not a part of it and yet you are interested, I'm going to ask you to see Rochelle Roberts, my chief of staff. They are meeting regularly to inform us where we should be investing, how we can better support our seniors. The last thing I would say is and I don't want to speak too out of turn, but at the Howard Divinity campus, one of the plans that have been discussed is for a senior facility, a senior housing facility, as well as at the new McMillan development site that is coming online. And so at 2 places in our ward in the coming years, we should have new, fully resourced senior housing facilities. If you want more information, please again engage with our team and we're happy to follow. I just wanted to put those plugs in because I know you all mentioned our seniors.
We'll make them come.
Yes.
But we don't really have, they say senior, you live in senior house in one moment, the next one is multi-family. What I don't like is to have worked, retired with 2 jobs, worked all my life, voted taxpayer, and then when I become a senior, placed in housing. I mixed them with people that have mental health problems. I retired from St. Louis for mental health. Mixing with people out of jail, drug treatment programs, and there's no seem to be accountability.
Yes.
And they're not reformed. A lot of them not reformed, and I resent it most times.
Understood. Thank you for that feedback.
That's why.
And I want to give you the floor as well. If you haven't already, can you share your contact, ma'am, with Rochelle Roberts so we can follow up with? Yes.
To piggyback on what she was saying, but we did it, I think it's, Trinidad, in that area. And we had a beautiful place where we could sit, go out and whatever. And that was, Starburst Fest.
Yes.
But now that's taken over by, you know what?
Yes. Yes.
And, I think we have some of those in our building as well. And
Are you at the Delta Towers building?
Yes.
Yes, understood. If you two could share your contact, I am happy to follow up. We are actively working with partners at Starburst Plaza. I wish I had an easy answer for you. But we know that conditions there are not suitable for our seniors or anybody for that matter.
They did. We have a beautiful library in walking distance, and that's the Rosedale Library.
Yes.
But now, the youth, and I started saying something to them, but I wasn't sure. And I was typing, engrossed in what I was doing, and you're supposed to be quiet at the library.
Yes.
But came in and it was just like, well, we'll show off, you know, and loud mouth and everything. And I was just thinking, yeah, we need to concentrate on youth, you know, because some of them don't know how to act. I'm sorry to say.
Understood. Thank you. Before you leave again, if you could share your contact information so we can be sure to follow up.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. For the sake of time, we're going to keep moving. Again, the question was what Ward 5 facilities could benefit most from more investment? Did anybody want to elaborate on their response that they shared here to this question? I see, let's go over here, Commissioner Galvin, and then over here, this hand here. Yes.
Yeah, I think for, Harry Thomas or for Edge Recreation Center, just increasing the hours of operation. I think that they're, Sunday, the fact that they're closed, I think that's a good opportunity for kids and seniors alike to be able to use the space.
Yes.
And even late into the evenings, so that we can have safe spaces.
Absolutely. And I would say at Edgewood Rec in particular, there's a constant tension because it is seen as a citywide rec. And so how do we prioritize Edgewood neighbors to utilize that rec versus outsiders? And by outsiders, I mean non-district residents, but also residents from across the city. It is a constant tension, as you are well aware, Commissioner. Yes, over here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shamika Smith. I am coming on behalf of Lincoln Elementary School, which is the pride of Ward 5, if you don't know, in terms of elementary schools. I'm not biased, but they outperform most of other schools within Ward 5. Anyway, getting what I came here for. Lincoln, like I came last year, well, here you have a lot of issues in terms of HVAC, a lot of, my son is in pre-K4, a kindergarten, and the classroom is so cold, we have the room actually to the library, have classroom in the cafeteria, because of, HVAC issues. We have asked for a small capital improvement. We are on the list for a few this summer. However, now the school is slated to be a summer school site. They didn't converse with each other.
Yes.
So now we're back on the list. Who knows when we're gonna get these improvements, because now we're a summer school site. So I would like to know how can we request an alternative site since we have been asking for these improvements and now we're on the list for improvements, and now we can't get the improvements because it's a summer school. And we've been asking for a marquee board. I know you said, Dr. Representative, there's a grant you can put in. The marquee board is $20,000. I've been at the school since my daughter's in pre-K3, she's in 2nd grade, and a $20,000 project can't get funded yet.
No, happy to talk with you offline. I think outside of the budget, there are perhaps some other creative ways that we could deliver a marquee for the school. The school is also slated for modernization. It's slated for modernization in the future. And so the concern there is balancing, investing in the current facilities, and they will be redone in the future. What I would say about the summer site, our team will follow up about that. We just had a hearing with DCPS about maintenance requests and conditions. Langdon, it's unacceptable, just to be frank. And the chancellor has not been able to provide sufficient answers about the conditions, not of just Langdon, but a number of schools across the district. I remember at the height of the pandemic, when we were flush with federal dollars, we were promised that all of our schools were going to have new HVAC systems. And yet still many years later, here we are, and Langdon is piecemealing their system. So our team is actively working on it. I wish I had an easier and more a quicker fix, but it is a work in progress. And the marquee, I think, what I'm thinking is there are commitments from developers, frankly, like the developers at Macmillan, where they have community benefit agreements. And perhaps that could be a creative avenue to deliver a marquee from the school versus the budget process. So I'm happy to talk to you about that. All right, let's keep going for the sake of time. Where do you think, now this is a key question, where do you think there is wasteful spending in the district's budget? So I see Commissioner Lewis, this is her big thing, I know. Where is there, well, where is there, I'm gonna ask you to share your feedback here. Where do you think there is wasteful spending in the district's budget? So with a roughly $20 billion budget, where might there be wasteful spending? Who put DCPS central office? Well, I was gonna ask you to elaborate if you care to share more?
I didn't think it's and that is not based on most parents, because I don't have kids, but my impression from talking to teachers and parents is that it's a bit lopsided.
And I think the numbers bear that out. And so the council in the last few years has been, we have been fighting DCPS to ensure that more dollars go directly to schools. And why this matters is because year after year, our schools are having to cut their budget, cut positions, reduce services and programs for students. At the same time, central office downtown continues to grow. And so the chairman introduced a schools first budgeting process, which I'm not here to say is perfect, but the spirit is that we first fund our schools and then fund central office because as Jenna mentioned, it is top heavy. So I would agree with that. Anybody want to elaborate if you share economic development? Anybody here that said economic development? Yes.
Yeah, but even that is that I think correctly about contracts or what you said about that the city may fund the development of the stadium, but also in general. I like to see our tax dollars moving towards investments in public spaces, public facilities, and not necessarily private development.
Okay. Thank you for that. I don't know if you were here earlier, but I agree with you that tax dollars should not be going to build a stadium. Now, it's also worth noting the owner of the Commanders was able to fund privately the construction of a stadium in Philadelphia. So it's possible. And that's what we should expect here. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to keep us moving. But first, someone mentioned downtown. Anybody here that said downtown? This too is attention. Anybody here?
I agree. I didn't mention that. I agree.
Why do you think downtown is a waste of spending?
So I'm a man. I put them together because I was the one who wrote green space. And girl almost died right here. That's my respected neighbor. We have a large homeless and mental health crisis, and these are native Washingtonians who were born and bred here. And so for people of color, unless it's for education, safety, or economic opportunity, we can't move unless we're a burden. And so we continue to build these edifices, have these parks they can't sleep on, things that are fun for y'all to look at and makes you feel good. But in real whole life, these are not places that are hiring anybody who looks love and lives here for real. They are not places where any of us can afford to live. They're not places where any of our children can learn or grow. And so we've got to be real that if I can't live in the green space, if I can't eat anything from the green space, that is nothing but your privilege sitting there taking up space.
I hear you. I hear you. And I am sympathetic to that. My only coloring of that, and I appreciate the passion.
And there's green space in Southeast, so we weren't scared to go see the most green space in Southeast, including the most cherry blossoms that grow in DC are actually at the tidal basin then you know your.
I mean, outside of Ward 5, Southeast has some of the most beautiful green space.
But the most cherries off.
I agree with you fully. What I hear you saying is that there needs to be an investment equally, if not more, in other parts of the city. That has been my through point. I would argue the numbers do suggest that it is to our benefit economically to invest downtown. So it's not just about statutes and green space. It's about how do we drive traffic so people are staying in hotels, spending money, renting office space. At the same time, we cannot neglect Ward 7, 8, Ward 5, and we know that that has been happening for decades.
Can I offer this one comment?
Yes,
I know
please.
it's-
We're gonna keep going.
I don't wanna do downtown and you don't want go-go in, because that's not DC.
Okay,
So that's the mind frame.
let's have go-go.
I mean, that sounds great when you become mayor, and I fully support that, but let's be real about how this process really works.
Understood.
Sidebar.
I hear you loud and clear. I hear you loud and clear.
I'm happy I moved to your ward.
I love it. I love it. Resident, okay, I'm gonna, for the sake of time, I see the hand. I'm gonna keep us moving. I promise I'm gonna come, because I wanna let us out here on time. Residents are struggling to rent and purchase homes while our existing supply of affordable housing is in jeopardy. What would you prioritize? So you have a number of options here: building new affordable housing, preventing evictions today, preserving existing affordable housing, et cetera. While you answer here, I will provide a little context. We know that there are estimates that there is unpaid rent across the district in the tens of millions of dollars. Now, a cynical view is that, oh, people are playing the system and just not paying the rent. I think while that does exist to a certain extent, it is also very hard for people to make ends meet, and people are struggling to afford this very expensive city. I think we also need to grapple with the fact that what is deemed affordable is not truly affordable for a lot of people in the District of Columbia. That said, the council addressed loopholes with ERAP, which is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. In short, what existed before was that if you applied for ERAP, it stayed an eviction. So just merely applying for ERAP from the city, whether or not you received it, meant a landlord could not evict you. And so we saw individuals not paying rent for months, years in some cases. And so the council adjusted that process that would close that loophole. I know that that is insufficient because, again, affordable housing is not fully affordable. People are quickly exhausting ERAP. Every time it opens, the funds are exhausted in hours. I think this last round, funds were exhausted in less than 6 hours. And so this question is around what more do we need to do and what ideas do you have around that? More to come on this. How can we better support seniors through our budget? And I wish they were here.
You know what?
Well, I'm gonna access, keep going, and I'm gonna come back to your comments. So put a pin in it, but here. How can we better support seniors through our budget? I agree with them wholeheartedly. I do not think the district does nearly enough for our seniors. I think there's a host of things that we need to do across the board.
Yes.
But we do need to better support our seniors, especially those who have given so much to the district over the years. I saw something making bus stops more accessible. One concrete thing I'm happy to say, my team developed a better bus network task force, and we worked with WMATA. One of the recommendations that we made was that they adjust their bus stop on Bladensburg, knowing that there are a number of senior facilities there, thinking about access to bus stops for our seniors in particular. I also see access to housing, more programs, fund home improvement, mobility grant programs. Thank you. Keep the ideas coming. More housing, caregiver resources, and support.
Is the current caregiver program a DC specific program? Or
Yes.
is that a federal?
It is a DC program.
Oh.
Through CFSA? Yes. And I'm happy to say that in teaming up with Councilmember Louis George, I offered legislation to increase the subsidy for the grandparent caregiver program. So that program is for those grandparents that are taking care of their grandchildren as part of, to keep those children out of the, welfare system, to increase the subsidy that they receive, which is still not enough to feed.
Most grandparents don't know what it is.
I do know that. I do know that. All right, let's keep going for the sake of time. If you had $100 to spend on economic development, what would you spend it on? Supporting community-run grocery stores, helping workers start and maintain their own cooperative businesses, investing in a basic income, investing in improvements to Capital One. These are a little all over the place, I will admit, but we want to get a sense of where you prioritize and how it might inform some of the investments that we're considering as a team. I'm sprinkling in things here as we go along. A key focus for me, development-wise, is the development of the Rhode Island corridor. Last year, I secured funding for the Office of Planning to conduct a study on Rhode Island from 12th Street through Eastern Avenue, the border of the city. They will come back this year with recommendations and a summary of their analysis. And in future years, the hope is that we can drive development along that corridor. So things like grocery stores, housing, amenities, outlets, using things like the Woodbridge Library and perhaps a new library as anchors for the development along that corridor. Let's keep going for the sake of time. How can we better support district youth through our budget? So we talked about seniors. How can we support our youth? While you respond here, I will say we are hearing rhetoric from some of our federal partners that they want to criminalize our youth. They want to prosecute youth as adults and do it more regularly. And it is important that we invest in them because it's our responsibility to keep them from harm's way, but also from engaging in the wrong activities. So even though you may not see the screen, we're going to get it fixed. Please answer, how should we invest in our youth?
Well, I think they should start implementing mindfulness, meditation, and yoga in the schools, because studies have already been proven that when they have this type of suspension rates go down by 75%.
So they have that. They have a director of SEL in the school that we've had for some time. He makes over 6 figures, and the point was that all the schools were supposed to be able to have.
And they don't.
And they don't.
So I think one of the things that is important to name is that we allocated resources, and there are things that exist that we haven't pushed on the efficacy, which is what he said about oversight. And why performance is very important.
I want to get that information.
I love that. Look at this. Cross-pollination.
Because I'm really tired.
Okay, wait. Let's finish this and then let's carry that. One question here, and then we're gonna keep going. Yes.
We need to have really get together and reinforce and put back in public education, vocational education as part of the curriculum. We have forced everyone into STEM, which I have no problem with. Children graduate from STEM schools, but we're losing generations of young people because they have the skills beyond that.
I hear you.
They end up in the juvenile justice system. Just for a point, McKinney Tech, one of the first things we've done.
Yes.
In the city. And that school needs to be put on, it needs to be redone now. It needs to be worked on now. So there's some major work. We're going to have a granddaughter there, 2 children graduating there, reopening. So that vocational education, I've been many a time.
Yes.
Much needed in the curriculum, not after they get out of school, but in the curriculum. Public education.
I hear you loud and clear.
And let's tackle low literacy rate.
I hear you loud and clear. I'm happy to talk about some of the efforts that we're leading on for vocational education. It is the CTE programming now, but we do have some. I agree with you. We need much more to provide opportunities to our young people. Yep. We have a number of, we have four questions. So I'm going to ask for 5 more minutes, and I promise we're going to break. We may not get our projectors back, and that is okay. So I'm just going to ask that you keep going ahead on the Mentimeter. I believe that should still be working, right?
I believe the question you should be seeing is what would best describe how you feel about DC as we enter the fiscal year 26 budget
All I
process?
say is thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let me ask this as a whole, 1 second before we lose the room. What would best describe how you feel about DC as we enter this budget process? And my team will manually capture some notes and reflection.
Oakland.
Okay, what else? And if we could raise hands. Say that again.
Ready to fight?
Ready to fight, yes. Skeptical, okay?
Optimistic, yeah.
Optimistic, okay? What else? Hopeful. Frustrated. Determined. New leadership. What else?
Be the change.
Be the change. Let's take 2 more responses. Ms. Dorothy, how are you feeling?
I am feeling that, we build new district facilities, rec centers, schools, et cetera. And then just forget about them until they're collapsing. Isn't there a maintenance budget for
Yes,
maintenance?
yes.
And who's holding the maintenance people accountable if I have that money being spent?
Yes,
There's no reason for Turkey to be in the condition it's in. And some of the other rec centers.
I agree with you completely. The agency responsible for maintenance is DGS, the Department of General Services, and I agree with you completely. And that is a focus and a priority of the council, is to get DGS to focus on preventative maintenance versus just building a nice shiny building and then forgetting about it.
Doesn't at-large Councilmember Robert White chair that?
No, Christina Hicks.
No, Councilmember Lewis George now has
Okay,
responsibility.
I'll just read, okay, cool.
Okay, I think we have one more question here, and we're gonna go, and then we're gonna close. Do we have one more question? If you could choose one initiative or program to prioritize this budget cycle, what would it be? So this is akin to the question we started with. That one thing you're most excited about this budget cycle. So if we came to you and said, what is the one thing that we're gonna double down and invest on, what would it be? Schools, education, initiative 83, increasing the unemployment amount. Rhode Island Avenue, bus lanes, Harry Thomas Rec, after school programs. Keep it coming. This is super helpful, again, as we're prioritizing and we have to make tough choices. UDC Lamont Riggs campus, I imagine our Riggs Park neighbors. I love it, I love it, I love it.
Please recommend, the newest rec center in the North Island. It's empty trail.
Are you talking about Reservoir Park?
Yes.
Got it, understood. Okay, with that, please continue to respond. I want to thank our neighbors who are joining us virtually. I want to thank you all here in the room for your lively engagement. While this concludes today's formal budget forum, it only begins our budget process. Our team will reach out to share a summary of what we heard today. We have also been conducting a survey. If you have not completed the survey, please do. Link to that survey can be found on our website and in our newsletter. And it asks many of the questions that you asked here tonight. What happens next? A few key data points. As I mentioned, the CFO will come out this week with revenue estimates. That will determine the water line for our budget for the coming year. The mayor will unveil her budget on April 2nd. If there is a change because of federal billings, that will be announced. But right now, the mayor will present her budget on April 2nd. And then the council will then immediately go into budget oversight hearings. And then we will have our first vote on the budget on May 28th. And our second vote on the budget, June 15th-ish, somewhere around that time. So there's ample opportunity for your voice to be heard. If I have one request of you, it would please engage with the council as we go through this process.
I guarantee you, I will go to bat for Ward 5. And as we highlighted earlier, we have lots of things to be proud of. We have secured significant wins on behalf of Ward 5 neighbors. What is even better is when my colleagues get to see Ward 5 neighbors turning out in significant numbers in hearings, sending in written emails and letters saying these are the investments that we are demanding on behalf of Ward 5. What I can tell you is that neighbors in parts of the city do that really well. And we are wanting Ward 5 neighbors to do that a little bit better. You all have been great engaging tonight. And I'm hopeful that we can keep this energy going. So thank you. And again, thank you to our friends at Friendship for having us. All right, Jim from Brookland is hoping to connect with other neighbors from Brookland. If you didn't hear him, Jim, raise your hand. If you live in Brookland, say hi to Jim.